Usually when I do review videos or unboxing videos, it's usually for a fancy box set or it's a film that is so laden with special features that I feel I just need to do a video and just try and shine a bigger spotlight on the movie. However, sometimes I like to push myself out of my comfort zone, and that's exactly what I'm doing today. So I'm going to do a short video on this Blu-ray and this film. I'm going to call it Port of Shadows because the film is known as Port of Shadows. The translation of Le Quai de Brumes, which as you can tell, that's why I'm going to call it Port of Shadows, actually translates into the Key of Mists. So it's not a translation into Port of Shadows. But this is a Blu-ray that has just been released by Studio Canal. 14.99 retail, and even just feeling it is part of their vintage world cinema range that they do. And I'm not a huge genius when it comes to European cinema, as you will find out when you work your way through this video. Obviously, I know a fair bit about Hollywood, I know a fair bit about British cinema, and I know a fair bit about Irish cinema. Not so well up on European cinema, not well up on French New Wave or French Noir or poetic realism, as this film has been described in one of the special features. I just tend to watch movies for movies, to see what the story is, to see what the performances are like. And when it comes to Blu-rays and DVDs, to see what the special features are like and what the presentation of the movie is like. So Le Quai de Brumes, or Port of Shadows, is a film from 1938. I'm just going to put this down and I'm just going to put a bit of a cover image up here just so I can talk at you. It is a film from 1938 that I had never heard of. So full disclosure, I knew nothing about this film beforehand, didn't even know of his existence until I received a press release through regarding this Blu-ray release. Picked up the Blu-ray, decided, right, okay, tonight's the night. Last night, I sat down, I unboxed it. I've not done an unboxing video on this because it is just a standard Blu-ray. There's no fancy packaging, there's no art cards. It is just a Blu-ray. It comes wrapped in cellophane. It comes in one of these very nice slip covers. The one thing that I do notice instantly when I had the thing in my hand, and still do, is it just feels pure quality. So this is a nice sort of glossy slip cover. It feels, I can't feel where the joins are. It feels pure quality, pure class. The Blu-ray case itself is one of these thinner ones that seem to be all the norm nowadays. I guess it takes up less plastic. But I have noticed these. I think the first one I ever noticed that was quite thin was Oppenheimer, which I got a couple of years ago, I guess. But it's still the same size as a Blu-ray, it's just thinner. So for the OCD people, you may get a little bit annoyed when you start lining it up with your other ones and you've got older cases that aren't quite as thin as that. Inside the box, there is just a disc. There's no, like I said, this is not a fancy packaged Blu-ray, which I guess is why they can keep it to $14.99. But what you're going to be purchasing this one for anyway is the movie itself and the special features. Now, I'm a sucker for special features. I love them. So when I look at the back of a Blu-ray box and there's a huge list of special features, I get very excited. And that can sometimes be the decider between me purchasing it or me not purchasing it. Now, I looked at the back of this one, and I'm going to show you there. I'm trying not to interrupt the camera. So there we go. You can see a nice reflection of like everything. But there's 4 special features listed. Now, 4 isn't a lot. And so last night, after I'd watched the movie, I'm like, okay, let me check out some of these special features, see what they are, see how long they are. So the first one we get, which is a new one, is a documentary called The Poetry of Misfortune. Now, the list of special features is just 4, but this first one is 56 minutes long. So already I'm like, well, that's impressive, because it might just be a list of 4 special features, but when one of these is just short of an hour, things are looking good. Now, The Poetry of Misfortune is subtitled, as all the special features are on this French movie, course they would be. And it is where a bunch of writers and critics and filmmakers and stuff all discuss the movie and its legacy and its creation. And so it's a good old 1 hour university course type featurette, which I've watched some of it, but it was quite late last night when I finished watching Port of Shadows. So I have planned to watch that later on today, but I checked it out. It's 56 minutes. Does look pretty interesting. But for me, trying to take in academics talking at me about 11:30 at night probably wasn't the wisest of moves. The next one is an introduction by Jeanette Vincendeux. Probably pronounced Jeanette's name wrong there. That is only a 6-minute introduction. I know Jeanette she's a film studies professor, so she knows far more about French cinema than I do. So do check out that 6-minute introduction. She goes into a little bit of the history of the movie and what you're about to watch. The next featurette is called On the Dock, which is 44 minutes. So if you just look at the poetry of misfortune and then On the Dock, you're looking at a reasonable length. You know, it's longer than the film for these two featurettes. There is some overlap with On the Dock. It does focus a lot on Jacques Prévert, who's the writer of Port of Shadows. But as you find with a lot of special features, there is some overlap, but you don't mind it. It's being said by different people, so it is fine. And then the final one is, which is also a new featurette, is Alternative End Credits. Now, apparently, like I say, I knew nothing about this movie going in. Now, apparently, it's made in 1938. Originally, it was going to be it was going to be made in Germany. But at the time, the rise of the Nazi Party, etc., Goebbels was in charge of like the film division. So what he said goes. He looked at the script. He decided he didn't like it. The film got vetoed. It went over to France, and that's how the film ended up being made by French crew. What I didn't realize, and I'll give you a very quick pitch of what the movie is about according to IMDb, and then I'll get into my own thoughts about what the movie is like for me going in, never having heard of it at all, and just experiencing it on my TV. So IMDb credit the film, a military deserter finds love and trouble and a small dog in a foggy French port city. Now, whilst that is an accurate description of the film you're going to watch, there's so much more to it than that. There really, really is. One thing that is interesting is never in the film do you hear the word deserter mentioned. And apparently that was at the insistence of the French film division and whoever was calling the shots back then. Because the film does center around a soldier who deserts from the army, they didn't think that was a real good look for the French military, which was obviously prepared itself for World War II. And so there was two changes that they requested. One of them was that the word deserter is never ever mentioned in the film, which isn't. And in the second, there is a scene in it, where Jean, who plays the deserter, see, I can say the word deserter, he plays the soldier, where he trades his uniform in for civilian clothes so he can go do stuff. I'm not going to be too spoilery in this one. And in the original script, Jean was to throw his uniform on the ground, and the French film division or government or military or whatever decided that was disrespectful to the French uniform. So in the movie, you see him fold it up and respectfully hand it over to somebody else. So that was something obviously I didn't know when I was watching the film. I just remember seeing the scene, but then watching some of the special features, you're like, it's the little subtleties that you do learn from watching special features in these movies. They are really, really interesting. So as I say, the very basic pitch: a military deserter finds love and trouble in a small dog in a foggy French port city. A little bit more in depth of what the plot is we meet Jean at the beginning. He's walking along the road. He hitchhikes with a truck driver. ends up in a French port city, which apparently is meant to be Le Havre. I don't know. That's apparently what it's alluded to in that, but the film was all shot on sound stages and stuff. So well done to the set builders. So he ends up in the town. You can tell he's a deserter, even though he never says it, because he's always avoiding all the other military people and police and stuff like that. And then it has this sort of sequence which is a bit like the Hateful Eight, where everybody ends up in like one cabin or one bar, and you just meet all these weird and wonderful characters. There's an artist, there's the barman who's from Panama, there's the town drunk who likes rum, and then there's Jean, the soldier. We meet Nellie, who is sort of, she's not necessarily a gangster's moll, but there is a gangster who just keeps chasing around after her, and she's not a fan. So all that thing goes. It's a wonderful mix of all these just weird and wonderful and very, very real characters. And yes, there's a small dog in it. A small dog, for some reason, encounters Jean and just decides, I'm just going to follow you around everywhere. And the dog does play quite a pivotal scene throughout the movie. The dog's great. So it's a film that is very easy to follow. I mean, you look at the special features and they're talking about how this is poetic realism and blah, 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 and stuff I don't understand. So that's why I'm saying blah, blah, blah. Genuinely don't understand what that means. But it is a film about a wonderful mix of characters all interacting with each other in a believable sense. So there's no spaceships, there's no crazy car chases, there's no flashy editing because it was 1938. It's just a really interesting character-driven film. It is subtitled, so there's nothing wrong with subtitled movies, but I find that, me personally, I've got to be in the mood for a subtitled movie, if that makes sense. I've got to put myself in the frame of mind going, okay, I've got to watch the subtitled movie, I'm now going to watch it. I can't really have any distractions going on, so if there's a lot of noise going on in the house, it's like, I'll watch this film later, which is why it was last night about 10 o'clock when the house was sleeping and I decided to check out Port of Shadows. As I'd mentioned earlier, I love Hollywood movies, but I need to, well, I don't need to, I enjoy pushing myself out of this comfort zone of watching the latest Fast and Furious movie or the latest Stephen King adaptations, and just go and watch some film history. And I have discovered a gem in Le Quai de Brumes. See, I'm speaking fluent French already. So I would highly recommend it. It's $14.99. So if you tend to just, watch lots of Marvel movies and stuff, fair play to you. Nothing wrong with that. But sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of culture. And I think this is a great addition to the cultural Blu-ray section of my my movie collection. So yes, I very much enjoy it. I'm still not an expert on French films, but I've seen one more French film than I had yesterday after watching Port of Shadows. So I highly recommend you check it out.